I'm John Bresnan with Punchbowl News, and I'm here for 5 questions with Pramila Jayapal. This is Congresswoman Jayapal. She's in her 3rd House term. She's chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and she's one of a new generation of leaders in Congress. I'm usually bugging in the hallway in Congress, so I'm using so I appreciate you doing this today for me. And let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about. So I want to start off with yesterday's vote on the budget resolution. It was a major issue, the $3.5 trillion budget resolution. Why is that so important? Why was it so important for the House to pass that yesterday?
Well, this is the thing that lays the groundwork for the ultimate bill that will allow us for the first time in history to provide paid leave, universal child care, additions to housing that are so necessary, making sure we invest in Medicare expansion, and of course, immigration and climate justice. And this is the bill that allows us to do that. So the initial budget resolution is the thing that allows us to get to work. And we had a unanimous vote in the House, the Democratic caucus unified around this. And now we get to work on actually drafting the legislation to deliver for the people. This is what we promised. This is what we're going to deliver.
One of the things as chair of the CBC, one of the issues here, of course, has been this Senate bipartisan infrastructure bill. This is a $1 trillion bill. I know you have some concerns about the legislation, and let's talk about this because this is a big issue. This has been a big issue among Democrats. Why, your CBC has said you will not vote for this infrastructure bill before the reconciliation package is assembled. So, and this was a huge issue for the early part of this week among Democrats. This is something that the Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats had to they wrestled with among themselves. Why is it so important to vote first on on reconciliation and then on infrastructure, in your view?
Well, John, as you know, President Biden outlined a Build Back Better agenda back in February. And that Build Back Better agenda had all the things I just mentioned that are part of the Build Back Better reconciliation bill, as well as a smaller piece that is around infrastructure, roads, bridges, those kinds of things. And for us as progressives, we have always believed that we have to deliver the whole agenda to the president. And one can't come before the other in terms of the urgency of what we need to deliver. And so in order to make sure that this bigger bill, which has all the things I mentioned, actually is able to be passed and that people keep the urgency and the momentum together, we said we want to make sure we do that first, and then we will happily vote for the infrastructure bill, which is just a much smaller piece of legislation. It's significant, it's important. We look forward to working on it and getting it through and voting for it. But the reality is the totality of the Biden agenda, the Democratic agenda that we ran on and that we now have to deliver on, is really contained within the reconciliation bill. So let's pass that first, and then we'll make sure that we send both bills to the president's desk to sign.
Now, this doesn't seem like outside of Congress, this may not be a huge issue, but process matters inside Congress. It really is important. I know you know that covering Congress, I know that it's important. It has a significant impact. What the September 27th date, this now was the date that the leadership has agreed to consider this vote on the infrastructure package, on the $1 trillion infrastructure, not the larger package. Why is that's concerned progressives now, because we may not have the reconciliation package done by that point?
It doesn't really concern us, John. I don't think that was a significant concession, to be frank. I mean, we were always going to try to pass this as quickly as we can. We'd love to get it done. And I've been saying for months that we would get it done by the end of September, very beginning of October. And I think that's still where we're at. I think that at the end of the day, we will need to make sure that the reconciliation bill passes and that it has our 5 priorities that we've identified as the Progressive Caucus. And that is going to be the telling moment, right? That's the work we're going to have to do over the next month to get finished. And then as soon as we pass that reconciliation package, we will happily vote for the infrastructure package as well.
Talk about your priorities for the reconciliation bill. Talk about the CPC priorities.
Yeah, so 3 months ago, we laid out the priorities, and they are first, that we need to take urgent action on climate change. I mean, this is a massive issue. And as you know, there's very little that's contained on that within the infrastructure bill. It has to come within the reconciliation bill. So that's clean energy standards, is a civilian climate core. These are things that are absolutely essential. Second, we want to make sure that we are addressing healthcare through Medicare expansion, prescription drug pricing negotiation, lowering the age of Medicare eligibility, and adding dental, vision, and hearing to Medicare benefits. That's our second priority. Third priority, huge investment in housing. This is critical across the country. We know people can't afford housing. There's not enough housing. We need to invest in that. Fourth, we want to make sure that we are addressing all of the various pieces of immigration for essential workers. This is absolutely critical, John. These are the folks that have been on the front lines taking care of us through the pandemic, and we need to now deliver for them. So these are essential priorities of the CPC, and we're going to make sure that we continue to deliver on those. I will say happily that they are all contained within the Senate's budget resolution sort of framework. You know, the budget resolution is just a framework. Now we have to deal with the legislation, but they're all contained within the Senate budget resolution. And so I think that is absolutely critical.
Now, I know it's not personal, but there are significant policy differences inside your caucus between your moderates and your progressives. Can you talk about that? I know this is not some of the partisan issues. The gap is not as big, but there are significant policy differences. Can you talk about those?
Well, actually, John, one of the things I've been kind of surprised by in the reporting over the last couple of days is I actually don't think that there are significant policy differences. And by the way, I think I forgot to mention the fifth priority, incredibly important, which is the caring economy. This is paid leave, childcare, and an investment in long-term care. This is home and community-based services. Those are primarily jobs, by the way, held by women, often women of color, and they are extremely important if we are going to make sure that we get women back into the economy participating in our recovery. So that is the fifth and an extremely important priority. We share these priorities across the caucus. And interestingly, if you look at childcare, if you look at, or the care economy more broadly, if you look at Medicare negotiation and age eligibility age and dental, vision, and hearing, we did a letter led by the Progressive Caucus, as well as some of the most swing district Democrats, right? People like Cindy Axne, people like Susan Wild, Connor Lamb, Jared Golden, all people who said, we share this priority of making sure we get this into the reconciliation bill. Same thing with childcare, same thing with, all of these other pieces, climate change, for example. That is something that 90% of the caucus shares. And so this very small group of people, my colleagues that have sort of, gotten a lot of attention in the last couple of days, I just want to remind people that this is the Democratic agenda. This is President Biden's agenda. This is the agenda of the Speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, and of course, of the vast majority of our caucus who wanted to get the resolution done and want to pass a $3.5 trillion bill that invests in these critical priorities and allows people to wake up in the morning and feel differently about their lives and their livelihoods.
Now, this reconciliation package is going to be, the speed with which this is going to happen now in September is, I know it may seem slow from the outside, but inside a legislative body, which has to move our consensus and conciliation, this is moving at a very quick pace now. We may see there'll be committee votes on this pieces of this package by the middle of September. The whole thing may be on the floor by the end of the month. What is, of course, you're going to watch these priorities. When you're talking about your colleagues, what's the mood among them on saying, what's the feeling that, this is going to happen pretty quickly?
Well, quite honestly, we wanted to get this done 3 months ago. If it had been up to us progressives, we would have worked on this first. We would have gotten this finished because this is the big bill that's going to deliver for people. So we're excited about getting to work on it. We've already been working on it. I'll just tell you that, we've been working on sort of the key pieces of each of these priorities, what we want to see actually written into legislation. But you're right. I mean, it's going to be quick.
Really for
drafting
for
legislation is
Congress. Let's
always
put it
tough.
in
For
not the
Congress,
real world, for
exactly.
Congress. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right.
And for the enormity of what we're doing. And I guess that's just one thing I feel like I wake up every morning and I think about this, and I think about the enormity of what we are going to do. This is, I mean, we've talked about this as a once in a generation investment, but imagine that the United States of America is the only country of our wealth that does not provide universal childcare, paid leave, that isn't taking on climate change, that doesn't have housing for millions of people across the country, in the richest country in the world that is still lacking healthcare. And so this really is, I think, we have not had this opportunity, John, to do this kind of an investment in improving working people and poor people's lives. And to me, that's why it is so important that we move quickly with urgency, and that we don't allow anyone, no Democrat in the House or the Senate should oppose any of these things, because at the end of the day, again, remember, this is what people elected us to do, to deliver transformational change now that we have the Senate, the House, and the White House. And that's what we intend to do.
And we've already seen in the Senate side, we've seen Senator Sinema, we've seen Senator Manchin. They put out the warnings that they're not going to support a reconciliation package of this size. When you hear that, what is your reaction?
Well, look, I think that there are things that people aren't going to like in either bill. Progressives have things that they don't like in the infrastructure bill, and there are probably some people who don't think that everything that we're going to get into the reconciliation bill should be there. These two things are integrally tied together. That's a strategy that we progressives came up with early on in this process, more than 3 months ago. It's a strategy that Speaker Pelosi adopted, that Senator Schumer adopted, that President Biden adopted. And now that is how it's going to go. These two things have to go together. People are going to have to just give a little bit and say, well, I don't love the infrastructure bill, but yes, I'm going to vote for the infrastructure bill. Some people may say, well, I don't love all the things that are in the reconciliation bill, but yes, I'm going to vote for that, because at the end of the day, Democrats need to deliver, and we need to do it urgently. So, people always say things, John, but you know how that goes. At the end of the day, it's a big negotiation, and hopefully we can get all of this done. I believe we can.
One last political question, I'll let you go. There's, the House is up for grabs in 2022. Congress is up for grabs. Traditionally, the president's party doesn't do well in the first midterms. That's tradition. What's your reaction from your colleagues? Are they concerned about the losing their majority? Do you feel that? You talked about urgency. Do you feel that sense of urgency among your colleagues?
Absolutely. And I think that is why, again, so many of these priorities are embraced by people across the caucus. And I will just say, some people have called the group of 9 moderates, and I don't think there's anything moderate about not wanting to pass childcare or paid leave or any of these other things. The reality is the caucus has been extremely united on delivering, in part because it's the right thing to do, and also because it is incredibly popular. If we deliver these things, I believe we will hold the House. If we don't deliver these things, I think we can lose the House. I mean, I think that is important, because the people that I know who voted for the first time for Democrats in the last election, whether it was new voters coming in, whether it was voters who had been disillusioned by politics before, but then felt like it was really important to vote this last time, or whether it was, suburban women who came back over to us after perhaps voting Republican in the last election. All of these individuals are waiting to see if we actually can get these things done we promised, now that we've been given the House, the Senate, and the White House. So that's why it is so important for us to not undermine or shave down or lessen our ambition, but to actually think about what Joe Biden said back when he was talking about the American Rescue Plan, which is the problem is not that we go too big. The problem is that we go too small. Those same words apply here.
Great. Jayapal, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Nice to see you, John.